Welcome to Taking Stock with Kelly McMillan. If the name sounds like a business show to you, then you've got it all wrong. Kelly McMillan is the principal of McMillan Fiberglass Stocks and will talk about shooting for fun, competition, hunting, and self-defense. Now, here is your host, Kelly McMillan.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Taking Stock with Kelly McMillan. Really glad to be here today. Last week was the very first show in well over a year that I wasn't present for. Zev did a pretty good job. Cooper did a good job. It was a pre-record, so it worked out just fine. But I'm glad to be here today. I was in Costa Rica with the NRA and did a little fishing and a little networking as an advertiser with the NRA publications. They wanted to take me out and treat me to some really good fishing. Unfortunately, I'm a little disappointed in the fishing, but we had a great time as a group of guys. So as you can see in the windows, we've got Bethany McMillan here. She's going to join us for most of this show. Cooper is here, as she normally is, but we're going to make her stay on camera today instead of hiding behind the little blackout. And right now we also have Gary Larson, and we're going to get to Gary in just a minute. Just wanted to talk about a few things. We are live on Facebook. I want to thank all of our Facebook watchers and listeners for tuning us in. It's going to be a great show. We're going to keep track of the feed, so if you guys have any questions for either of our guests or us, either one, type it into the feed, and we'll get to it when the time permits. So we're going to try to take care of everyone that's listening and watching. Great video feed. I've said it before, I really love Zoom, and it really works really well for this type of format. Zev is not here today. He's on the road to Texas to the world's longest shot challenge and representing ELRHQ.com. ELRHQ was the title sponsor of the match, so he's there, letting everybody know about the products that we have and how that relates to ELR, and going to represent both McMillan and ELRHQ. Cooper, I'm going to start with you. Talk to us about our social media and stuff.
I would like to invite everyone to follow and like our Instagram and Facebook pages. So we're at Taking Stock with Kelly McMillan on Facebook and Instagram. And then we have McMillan Fiberglass Stocks on Facebook and then McMillan_stocks on Instagram. And of course, please follow ELRHQ. I'm wearing a shirt to represent to help Zev out. So please go to elrhq.com to sign up for our newsletters as well. And then you can find us at ELRHQ on Facebook and Instagram.
Thank you, Cooper. That was awesome. I like the shirt. And so, Britt, why don't you just say hi, tell everybody what's going on. I think you've got something you want to talk about with McCube, so we'll start you off with just a little introductory.
Hi. We are working diligently still on the McCubed line. We'll have a tactical and a hunting line. We are excited about it. The feedback we've got from the tactical line is great. We're still trying to finalize some minor details, making sure that we provide you guys with the best product possible. So it is taking a little longer than we expected, but know that the delay is only to produce a better product for you guys. So we're really excited. We're probably looking middle of the summer. Hunting stock will be coming very soon as well. So some exciting stuff is coming. You guys will be very impressed with them.
Now I'm going to apologize to Bethany for making her do that because it's not her fault. It's really nobody's fault. One of the things, and I've talked about this before, in deciding to do a plastic stock, in order for it to be truly a McMillan, it had to be different. It had to be better. And if it weren't, it wouldn't have been good for our brand. So we've worked really hard. We've developed a different process than anyone else has used. and I have to admit, I can now understand why nobody else has used it, because there are some really intricate things that I thought were pretty simple that turned out not to be. So they're giving us problems, but we're going to solve those problems. But the ultimate product is going to be unlike anything else on the market, and that's what's really important. So my fault, guys. Blame it on me.
We know stocks, but this is a different project altogether. So it's definitely been a learning curve for us, and we've learned a lot.
We have done some really cool stuff. The polymer detachable box bottom metal is really cool, and everybody who's seen it wants to use it for things other than a plastic stock.
And
now, it's made specifically for our stock, but we can inlet any of our McMillan stocks for it. So if you want to be able to buy a high quality detachable box magazine for around $79 instead of $350, then it'll be something you'll want to look at. So that's really cool too. Okay. Our first guest just happened to bump into me at the SHOT Show. Now, I know he didn't accidentally walk into the booth. He came in for a reason, but I had never met him before. And to be perfectly honest, I hadn't heard about what he did and why. And as soon as he started talking to me, I said, wait, you need to talk to my daughter. So I'm going to let Bethany handle the majority of this conversation with Gary, because I think it'll be evident during this conversation why they have such a bond. So, Britt, I want you to introduce Gary and start the conversation.
Hello, my friend. This is Gary Larson. He and I connected at SHOT Show over something, I guess it could be firearms related, but on a completely different level. So I'm going to let him start by just telling a little bit about himself and how we actually ended up connecting.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me on, first of all. And Kelly, it actually was on accident that I bumped into you, because I was waiting near your booth because I was actually lost and I couldn't find my way out of that area in SHOT Show. So I sent some Marines to come and rescue me. And in the process of them coming to get me, I just turned around and just happened to connect with you and Bethany. But so that was the beginning of our relationship. So my name's Gary Larson. I'm the architect of the Guardian Long Range competition. So the Guardian Long Range is a charity match. There are charity matches throughout the entire U.S. where 100% of the proceeds go back to help foster kids and orphans. Myself, I was a foster kid, orphan for several years growing up, from the time I was around 11 until I was getting ready to age out of the foster care system when I was 18. And actually had gotten adopted my senior year of high school by my caseworker. So that's a little bit about my background, but I've always had a passion for shooting. I've always wanted to, do things like that. And when I found an opportunity to be able to merge long-range shooting with a creative ministry, I created the Guardian Long Range competition about 5 years ago. So it's been hugely successful. It's been amazing. We've had a tremendous amount of sponsor support. Yeah, it's just taken off like wildfire. I don't want to share too much, because for the shooters who haven't been to a Guardian, there's a lot of really cool stories that come with that actually separate the Guardian from so many of the other matches out there.
So this past weekend, I attended my first Guardian match, and I will tell you, it is unlike any event, any charity event, any shooting event that I have ever attended. So can you share a little bit about what makes it different?
Yeah. So first of all, when shooters register, their registration fee is an actual donation, and it's a tax-deductible donation. So as a shooter, you get to not only shoot in a match, but you get to write it off for taxes. You get to help foster kids and orphans, things like that. So that's one of the key differentiators is, and that's true for sponsors and for shooters, is that as a 503c, you can write off all donations, including any of those registrations. So that's one of the other, one of the big differences. One of the other things is all of the donations that we get from sponsors like McMillan, 100% of those are raffled off. So the top shooter doesn't walk away with the top prize. We actually raffle everything off, and we raffle it off for $5 a ticket. And we've been so blessed to be able to have so many raffle tickets being purchased, like Brittany experienced last weekend, that we ran out of. We had 3 giant spools of raffle tickets, and we ran out of those. And I turn around, and Brittany's having to manually make pieces of paper and shove them into the raffle bucket, because it was such an overpouring of just support from all the shooters there. So that's one of the other key differentiators. The other thing is we really emphasize what I'd call creative fellowship, or some type of fellowship, where we want shooters and ROs and everybody to help each other, because there's nothing more frustrating than spending $200 to come to a match, not hitting anything, and then not understanding why you didn't hit anything. So we actually encourage people in your squad, actually even ROs, that if somebody is struggling, to be able to help with that. And what that does, that fosters an environment where you have shooters, probably 80% of our shooters have shot in 5 or less matches. And what you find is that those more seasoned shooters love helping and mentoring those, and we encourage that. So those are a few of the differences in the Guardian and other matches. One of the last things is, if we were to think about the Guardian in almost it's like an NRL PRS type match, but it has the feeling of your local club match, where it feels like family. By the end of the match, you've made friends, you've got connections, you've exchanged network to help you as a shooter and in other areas of your life. So it's much bigger than a shooting event. It truly is an experience.
And I saw that firsthand. We had less than ideal weather conditions at the match this past weekend, which wreaked havoc on people's physical comfort, but also their equipment. And we saw a couple people whose systems went down. And to my surprise, I think there were 6 or 8 other shooters offering up their systems so that shooter could shoot, and they would forego the rest of the competition. So just the camaraderie, the willingness to help, the fun. I think we laughed more that weekend than I have in years. So it was a great experience.
Hey, Gary, I want to ask a question. How did you get from foster kids, orphans, to a shooting match? I mean, that's a big leap.
Yeah. Foster kids and guns and stuff, they aren't the first 2 connect points people make. Well, so I was in ROTC when I was in high school, and I was part of a shooting team, and I've always appreciated shooting, and never really got to go into the military. I actually got out of the military before I actually started, ended up playing collegiate baseball and going on from there. But throughout my entire young life, I said, man, I really like to get back into shooting. And once I did, several years ago, I would go to the range and I would connect with people. And it was like, the running joke was these people would have like an AR in one hand and a Bible in another. And I was like, this is a total perfect demographic for the church to embrace. And why hasn't this been embraced and tapped into? And I said, you know what, I'm going to tap into this. And I'm currently a board member for Bethany. What's kind of funny is I went from being a foster kid under their care to where now I'm a leader in the largest Christian adoption foster care agency. And I kind of have that rags to riches story. But I asked for forgiveness and not permission. And what I did is I said, I'm going to go out and I'm going to build this thing and we're going to do it. And oh yeah, by the way, Bethany, I'm doing a fundraiser that involves guns. And there was a collective in the community. But regardless whether or not you enjoy guns, what your status is on guns. I encourage anybody to come to a guardian event and see the life change that we're doing there through this creative ministry. And I have a hard time believing anybody would say that this is not an event that everybody should participate in.
Well, McMillan likes to get involved in a lot of things, and we really want to be involved in things that we believe in. And as our conversation started, we probably hadn't talked for more than a minute and a half when you mentioned foster kids. And I said, wait a minute, you need to talk to my daughter. And that's a connection. Now, I'm not going to give her secret up. I'll let her talk about that. But we've done fundraisers using firearms before for unusual events. For instance, we raised money for ovarian cancer by doing a shotgun shoot. So, and you know, where ovarian cancer, now a lot of men were there too, but there were a lot of women shooting shotguns for the first time, which was really fun and really cool. But it was a really good cause, and that's when we really like to get behind it. And it explains why Brittany has committed to do what she has committed to do. So I'll let her talk about that a little bit.
I've spent 10 years of my adult life in education around kids. I got out to come back to the family business, and I didn't leave education to leave the kids. So that's one part of my life that was missing and coming back. So about October, I started the process of becoming a foster parent here in Arizona. Just because I've seen those kids come through my school. I've seen the situation that they've been in, and want to be able to be a positive role model, a positive part of their life for as long or as short as it may be. And it's just obviously something that touches me, to be able to combine basically two of my passions, which is kids and education and the family business. And I don't know that there could have been a better scenario of the two of them coming together.
And one other connection that we have to foster children is my wife, Mary Jo McMillan, who also works in the business, and a lot of people who do business with us know her. She was on the Foster Care Review Board as part of something that she felt really strongly about, to be a part of that whole process as well. So the fact that you just happened to accidentally find my booth, now that I am not surprised that you said that, because you can't tell how many people have come to that booth and said, we were looking all over for you, and when we found you, we were lost, because we just happened to be in a place at the SHOT Show where it's not as simple to find. And when you do, it's kind of like we're behind in between other booths, so it makes it difficult. So that didn't surprise me that you were lost. But I wish you had actually been looking for us. But.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because there have been many times where I felt like I was lost, but there's always a purpose in my journey. Even when this past weekend we had the match and we had some things go a little bit crazy with one of the lunches. What was funny is we had met a sponsor a couple weeks before who said, hey, I'd love to come out, just hang out, and do you mind if I bring snacks and drinks? And I said, sure, not a problem. Well, little did I know that the snacks and the drinks that this gentleman was going to provide helped hold the shooters off for the few hours that, was the delay in this lunch. So there's a plan in all of, this. I'm not smart enough to have pulled all of this off. This meeting Brittany and meeting you and getting involved with this, it's been an awesome experience. It's only starting. Now, Brittany's got some master mega plans for the Guardian when we come to Arizona. I know we'll talk about it in a little bit, but it's going to be, she's a bulldog. She's going to get some amazing things done through the Guardian.
Boy, I'm glad you said that, not me.
I'm not in the same studio as she.
Well, I knew you meant that in an endearing term. She definitely works very hard, and anything that she takes on, she's going to do it absolutely as well as she possibly can. And if there's a goal to be achieved, that above that is where she sets her sights. So, but I want her to talk about that. I want her to tell everybody what we're doing here and what she's doing. And I'll tell you, when she says, Dad, I want to sponsor a match, I said, it's on you, girl. It's all you. I got plenty to do. So Britt, why don't you go ahead and talk about it?
So again, Gary and I chatted for quite a while at SHOT Show. The majority of the Guardian matches are all on the East Coast, which is quite a far trek for all of us. So I said, well, we need to fix that because there's a lot of shooters on the West Coast that really want to participate. So we're going to have a match for you. And I don't really think Gary believed me. But shortly thereafter, we had the site nailed down. I think we're pretty well set in terms of overall logistics and the course of fire and the date. And it's not until December. So we're ahead of the game, but we are going to host a Guardian match in Arizona in December. It'll be December, I'm giving away the dates, Gary?
Yep.
8th and 9th. And it is going to be up in northern Arizona, up in Wickiup at the Big Sandy Range. It is going to be all Guardian matches are unlike any other precision shooting match, but this is going to be unlike any other Guardian match too. So we've got a lot of exciting things. I don't want to give away all the secrets, but there are going to be some events and things that people can participate in that I would say most of the general public has probably never gotten the opportunity to do. So stay tuned for that. But we're excited. We've had Tim from Bethany come out and Patrick a couple weeks ago, look at the course of fire, set everything up. So we're well on our way to hosting a nice match.
This is the first time I've ever been involved with putting a match together where the course of fire has been done like 8 months in advance. Usually it's the week before I get something on a napkin and says, here's the course of fire, give it to the shooters. But Brittany has already got all that mapped out. So
one of the very best things about the fact that McMillan participates so heavily in competition and fundraising is that when we ask people, because we give so much, a lot of people give back. So I'm really excited at the fact that Brittany's got a really special plan for something. And the reason that I'm letting her do this is because it really is. When I told her it was her deal, all of these ideas she's come up with, and she's the one that's been doing the footwork to make it happen. But, a lot of people don't realize how many firearms related companies that we have here in the Valley and in the state of Arizona. And so one of her ideas, I think she needs to talk about right now.
I think you're muted, Brittany.
We're going to give away the secret. So one of the things that we do have planned is if you're familiar with at all where McMillan is in Phoenix, we consider ourselves part of Firearm Alley. There are several very large manufacturers and firearm companies within a very small circumference or very small area. And we are going to team up and produce an Arizona-built rifle for auction, raffle, a separate raffle from the majority of the prize table. And it will be made strictly by all Arizona parts, Arizona manufacturers. Arizona gunsmiths will be putting it together. Everything on that gun will be manufactured or produced in Arizona, which I think is a little special because this is the first West Coast match. We need to make it a little bit different. So we're excited. I won't give away all of the participants, but if you're familiar with firearms companies and where they're located, you can probably guess who will be participating.
I do want to give away some of the participants, not of the rifle though. We've gotten some feedback from Owens Armory. They're going to help us out. They put on a match, a PRS match, and so Beard's going to help us with anything that we need. I know that Tim Milkovich and Regina Milkovich are going to work as ROs. So there are a lot of people that we already have committed to this match that are going to help out with what's going on. Really exciting for me. It's going to be a really awesome thing for the Guardian, for Bethany, for foster kids in general. And it's going to be great for Brittany, because as part of Brittany's job of positioning herself to be the face of McMillan, she's starting to do some of the things that I've always done. And I think it's going to be good for her, and it's going to be good for McMillan too. So Gary, talk to us about why, and you mentioned that you were a foster kid, but you ended up going to the university and playing baseball.
Yeah.
Some people have this idea that foster homes are bad things. Mm. And that kids go from foster home to foster home. And I know there are sometimes examples of that, but I want people to think of fostering as being one of the biggest gifts that people can give, because it really does have the opportunity to change the kid's life.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I think of it, I'm a father of 4, and all of which are, older now. Believe it or not, I'm a couple years away from being an empty nester. But raising teenagers that were mine caused my hair loss, and they're mine. And what I think about is, to be a foster parent means I'm signing up to take a kid who most likely has come from a broken situation, and I'm going to step into that chaos and create calm and love and support. And it's not an easy job, but none of the jobs in our lives that are worth anything have ever come easy. And the people that have helped make me who I am today, and have helped shape my life as a husband, as a father, are the people who always stepped into the difficult, like Brittany and others who have raised their hand and said, this is what I want to do. So if there are people out there that are wondering about foster care, Bethany is, the largest organization in the U.S. that focuses on adoption and foster care. They're a phenomenal agency, but there are many others where if we were to just take, a fraction of the people that are in the firearms industry, and if they were to raise their hands as foster parents, what you would find is all of the kids would find homes. Just one quick statistic I want to share, which is 80% of kids that age out of the foster care system, and that means they've turned 18 and they're no longer a part of the state-run foster care system, 80% of them are homeless or in jail within a year. Let that sink in. Homeless or in jail within a year. And if you have an opportunity to step into that child's life at some point and change that, this is a phenomenal venue for that. So I thank McMillan for being a part of this and helping to change the trajectory of these kids' lives, many of which you'll never meet, but they'll be McMillan family regardless.
Well, thank you for being on the show, Gary, and thank you for all you do. I think it's very commendable that you work as hard as you do for this cause. We really believe in it. Thanks, Brittany, for her hard work for McMillan so that we can make this happen. You're not going to believe it, but we've blown through 30 minutes already. So unfortunately, we have to say goodbye now. I would like to ask all of our radio listeners to stand by while we take a short break, and we'll do a short commercial here on Facebook, but we'll be right back. Thank you. Okay, I want to take just a minute for everyone on Facebook. We mentioned that ELRHQ is the title sponsor of the longest shot competition being held in Texas this weekend. What ELRHQ is, if you're not certain, is it's basically a one-stop shop for everything related to long-range and extreme long-range shooting. We specifically cater to F-class, both open and FTR, high power, and PSR, in addition to extreme long-range shooting. And so you can go on to elrhq.com, check out all of our products. One of the things that you'll find out that we do is, rather than having informational videos on telling you how to use the products, we have our champions, and those are people who are literally champions in their designated sport or discipline, come on and tell you why they use the products that they use. And everything that we put on elrhq.com for sale are products that are proven to be the best out there. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have options. For instance, we carry 3 kinds of scopes. For an entry-level scope, Cytron for around $1,000 is as good as it gets. But we also carry Vortex, and then at the top of the end, Night Force stuff. So there's something for everybody, and in that category that they fit in, we want to make sure that we offer the best products there, and some people who can testify to why they use it and why they're good products. So that's what ELRHQ is all about.
We're going to take a look at the Phoenix Precision Light.
You are listening to Taking Stock with Kelly McMillan. Now back to the show.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for sticking around during that commercial break. Really enjoyed Gary. I love the whole program. He's so dedicated to what he does. And I like the fact that he was a rags to riches story, and shows why it's important for people to be willing to be foster parents and to have these kids in their homes, as Brittany said, for however short or long that might be, because it's a really, really good cause. To produce a guy like Gary through that system, it definitely shows you that it's worthwhile. So that was awesome. And I thank him again for everything that he does. Now I want to get on to our next guest, Nick Vitalbo. Nick, how are you?
Great. You got it right, too. I'm impressed.
Yeah. So you're the president of nVision Technology and nVisti, LLC.
Yes, that's correct.
Give us an overview of who you are first.
Sure. That's great. So most of us actually here came out of Lockheed Martin. We're located in Akron, Ohio. Most of the rest of the world knows us through a lot of the work, though, that we do with applied ballistics. And so we're actually the engineering team behind a lot of the applied ballistics products. And so most likely, my joke is always that you've probably cursed my name more than once or twice when using one of the products, like the Kestrel, maybe the Sig Sauer Kilo 2400, or other items like that, or maybe the applications on the phones. The team here in Akron is responsible for a lot of that stuff. So nVisti is the engineering branch of applied ballistics, as well as we do a lot of stuff with optical wind measurement and other devices like that.
Hold on just a second, Nick. Right there, Britt. Yeah. Sorry about that. I just wanted to get the Kestrel. This is the applied ballistics full Kestrel. Yeah, I wasn't going to take it out, but good, you've got yours. One of the products that we sell on elrhq.com. So just, I wanted to throw that out there. So.
Hey, I appreciate you plugging that. That's great.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. I thought that was fun.
That's okay. So the team here in Akron at nVisti and nVision, we do a lot of the work that's like the software work, the electronics work that's inside a lot of the components. Like, we work hand in hand with the team at Nelson Kellerman to do the integration of the ballistic solver into the device, as well as the applications. And really what I was hoping to do today is kind of maybe, I think a lot of the users and a lot of your listeners are probably users of the devices. I kind of wanted to give an update on some of the most recent advancements that we have going on, kind of give people an idea on how that's going to improve their performance at long range.
Sure, go ahead.
That sounds good. You may have noticed over the past couple weeks, there was a press release that was went out from Applied Ballistics. It was for the ESSO contract that Applied Ballistics won recently. That stands for Extreme Sniper Strike Operations, which is a pretty cool name. But what that really means is that Brian and the team up in Michigan are looking into how to improve the ballistic performance or the predictability of these ballistics computers to be able to accurately predict the trajectory at extreme long ranges, like 2,500 meters plus. And so that comes into play, especially like this weekend's world's longest shot competition, being able to put impacts on target with the first round is usually scored a lot higher. So not only in a military application, but from a competition standpoint as well. A lot of that comes from the work that was done in Modern Advancements Volume 2. I don't know if you guys are familiar with some of the studies that Brian did, but he shot the same projectile out of a barrel with an 8, a 10, and a 12 twist, and measured the elevation change at distance and saw the differences there. And it was actually pretty substantial between the two different or the 3 different barrels. And so a lot of that study is now going into make it across all calibers, all bullets, and a lot of that technology is going to get embedded into the Kestrel and other things.
So just as a quick question about that, Nick, most people determine the twist rate that they want to use based on the weight of the bullet, the length of the bullet, and what they think it takes to stabilize that bullet at whatever distance that they want to shoot at. Now, I'm assuming that because he shot these 3 different twists through the same gun, same bullet, and I'm sure the launch angle was probably about the same, so that they had similar flight characteristics or varying flight characteristics, and then that would be indicative of only the twists.
Yeah, he tried to make them basically all the same.
Okay.
So try to isolate all the variables when you're trying to do these experiments and just isolate the one thing that's different, and that's the twist rate in this case.
So what was the one thing that test showed that we didn't know before?
Really what it showed was that when you're shooting out of like a higher twist rate barrel, so like 1 in 8 twist, for instance, when the bullet was launched, the frontal area of the bullet was effectively lower. And so it flew with less drag. It didn't process as much. And the result of that was that the point of impact had less elevation drop. And then the 10 twist had more elevation drop. The 12 twist had the most. And so if you can characterize that across the board, then you can get a better solution at range. And so that's really what that testing was all about. The problem was that was one test. That's one caliber, one bullet, and one test. And now you need to be able to extend that across the board, all calibers and all twist rates and things like that. So that's what we're working on now.
And I don't want to get bogged down in this twist thing, but for a lot of people, I built rifles and I'm still not sure I understand exactly everything I need to know.
Sure.
For example, we put our 300 Win mags in our hunting rifles. For whatever reason, we put them in a 1 in 12. In our tactical rifles, we put them in a 1 in 11, thinking that the tactical guy's probably going to shoot a little bit heavier bullet. Come to find out, probably 1 in 10 is good for everything.
Probably.
But what the Marine Corps found when they were shooting 185 to 200 grain bullets out of a 24-inch barrel in a 308, a 1 in 8 was the best at 1,000 yards. The 1 in 8 was the best twist. You can't find a single competitive shooter anywhere shooting a 1 in 8 twist, 308, shooting the 185s or 200s.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know why that is. I mean, that's a lot of I would agree with their studies and what they found. I mean, that's definitely what we've found as well. But a lot of that needs to get pushed out into the public, and that's, I think, what Brian's mission is, and the Applied Ballistics team as well, is to educate the public on that kind of information and make sure that everybody's up to speed on all of that.
So how does this contract affect you and your companies?
So the way it usually works is applied ballistics is responsible for the science component. So basically the ballistic solver and how that math happens. Brian and his guys up there then take that, give it to us, and we propagate it out to the products. So the way it works is then that will get pushed out to the Kestrel, get pushed out to like the Kilo 2400 from Sig Sauer, or maybe even like the STORM SLX-E, which is a military device, as well as the RAPTAR-S, which is a military device. A lot of that stuff gets pushed out through our team.
I heard, erroneously maybe, or maybe that contract involves having to have a rifle that actually they can use to test it.
Yeah.
But it came out through someone that they got a rifle contract.
I think the press release says it, and so I have to go back and verify that, but I think there is a production of a weapon system there.
Okay. Now, but they're being charged with developing a system, or at least, I don't think AB ever wants to be in the firearms manufacturing business. So I'm assuming that whatever they have to produce in the way of a firearm is to help prove this theory.
Prove the concept. Yeah,
Okay.
and that's a lot of what it is. It's,
Okay, good.
proving the concepts on these things. So, but all that will trickle down eventually to all the civilian shooters as well. A lot of the work that they're doing in the lab will then go and be placed in the Kestrel. And so, one of the big things, and this kind of gets into the competition shooting and whatnot, is, I was kind of watching some of the videos yesterday from the world's longest shot competition. Some guys were posting on Facebook and such. They were out there trying to get good drop data at distance. And really, to get first round impacts, you need to be able to predict that prior to actually going out there, right?
Right.
And a lot of this stuff, a lot of these tests, a lot of this math, a lot of the work going on in the laboratory is going to be able to enable us to do better predictions at long range, and as a result, increase the probability of hit on target at extreme long range.
Well, I'm a real proponent of ELR. I'm never going to say that this is really ridiculous, because the margin of error, be it so small at 100, 200, or 1,000 yards, gets so big at 2 or 3 miles that any success is pretty much, I hate to say luck, but if your margin of error is larger than the target, there's got to be some luck involved in being able to get it to hit the target.
Well, you're right. And actually, it's kind of funny because a lot of the work that we do here is simulating what the probability of hit looks like. And if you can take 1,000 shots and simulate what that looks like from called weapon employment zone analysis perspective, what that shot distribution looks like, it's absolutely huge at range. And so you do get lucky sometimes when you get a bullet on target at those ranges. I mean, some of the uncertainties that add up here are just ridiculous. And your shot group looks like it's a 20 foot by 20 foot spread out there,
which would be minute of angle,
Yeah, exactly.
which is really good.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's hard to do anything repeatable in an area that seems like what you're doing is actually of any value. So yeah, and I don't want to demean long range shooting at all. I think every time you pull the trigger at extreme long range, we learn something that we didn't know before, which I think is really important. Had we not been trying those shots, that 2.2 mile shot by the Canadian sniper wouldn't have ever happened, because they wouldn't have not even known where to start to predict where that bullet was going to go. So they just wouldn't have taken the shot.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, that's really where applied ballistics and nVisti come into play. I mean, that's really what our goal is to be able to develop the technologies and the science behind all of that to enable those kind of shots to happen. And so a lot of the applied ballistic stuff you guys are pretty familiar with. A lot of the stuff that we do is also related to laser range finding. At long distance, the importance of having an accurate range to target is incredibly important. And then the other thing that we do, and this is really the part of the work that's really cool to talk about is optical wind measurement. That's a large portion of what we do too. So being able to shine a laser on the target, look at the return of that laser coming back, and determine what the average crosswind speed is between you and the target. Now, it's probably a little ways off before you see it in the civilian marketplace, but that's a lot of what we have under development here. And that's really where our heritage is at, is in how lasers propagate through the atmosphere and how you could take advantage of things like that in order to be able to measure the wind speed and such.
And that is the one thing that is probably the most
hellish.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great word. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that kills you.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
Because no matter how good you are, for instance, Emil Praslik, you may not know.
Yeah, we know each other well.
As good at reading wind as there is. But he's really good at 1,000 yards because he's had years and years and years of watching wind flags and this. Well, you get out to 2-3 miles, you don't have wind flags. You have 2 or 3 different directions of wind at the same time, and your eye just can't pick up some of that stuff. Cool to know that a laser can. That seems to me like that improvement right there will probably solve some of the biggest issues that we have with extreme long-range shooting.
Yeah, it's going to
when you get that developed.
Yeah, it's definitely a key to getting any hits at long range there. And I mean, when you think about it, though, it's like the bullet flight times are like 7, 8, 9 seconds. And even if you have a perfect wind measurement at the time you actually take the measurement, by the time that bullet actually gets out to the target, that wind has changed significantly. So there's also that involved. So that luck thing comes back into play quite a bit here.
Yeah, 7 seconds at 2 miles is the average flight time, depending on what the velocity was. But that's about what it was at the King of 2 miles. So it is really hard to imagine how long 7 seconds is when you're used to pulling the trigger and the hole appearing in the target. I mean, even at 1,000 yards, it's barely perceptible, the lag. But then when you get out at 2 miles, the 7 seconds is a long time.
That's incredibly long, yeah. And, by the time you make a correction to that, the wind will have changed. And, I'm sure Emil talked about this on the show when he was on, but, not only is it important to know like what the actual wind speed is now, but it's also important to know what's going to happen to the wind. So, if you study the wind for long enough, you'll realize that, the wind usually stays steady for quite some time and then it will gust up. So there's things like not wanting to shoot in a gust and whatnot that come into play also.
One of the things that I struggle with is when we're talking about producing a shoulder-fired rifle that can shoot a projectile that has the ballistic coefficient plus the mass to be, for a better word, lethal at these ranges. And so there's got to be a certain amount of powder, velocity, recoil comes into play. There's a lot of things. These guns they're shooting at King of 2 Mile, they put a 40-pound limit on them.
Yeah.
You're not carrying those guns in the field. I know a Barrett weighs over 40 pounds. The semi-auto Barrett weighs over 40 pounds with optics and a suppressor, but nobody wants to carry that either. There's been a trend to go away from the 50 cal to come up with a smaller bullet that has better flight characteristics so that they can have a rifle that they can actually carry and shoot. And does this program that AB is working on, is there any guidelines about how this firearm and system is going to perform and where it's going to be in the spectrum?
From a caliber perspective or a weight perspective, there's no real requirements with respect to that. But if you look at just in general, and really the civilian world, and especially these competitions, like the World's Longest Shot this week, are really driving the train there in terms of, ballistic performance and whatnot. And you see so many guys going with solids now as opposed to everything else. And so with these solids, you can come up with some pretty ridiculous designs and have extremely high ballistic coefficient bullets that are very long. But you'll notice though, like these bullets don't look like normal, lead-based, bullets with copper jackets. They are extremely long. They are, very pointed at the nose and things like that. So they're extremely different in terms of their design. And so there's a lot of work going into the actual bullet design itself. And I know Brian's working on this enabler cartridge, which is basically the enhanced like long range bullet and cartridge to just make sure that these bullets can be launched at sufficient velocity, can be stabilized out of a sufficiently fast twisted barrel, and because these solids are very, very long.
I don't know how long ago you worked at Lockheed Martin, but our paths crossed a little bit, because about 2008, 2009, there was a project out there, a guided 50 cal round. And I know Lockheed Martin had their hand in that. We originally started working with Boeing. One of the things about the program was that they had to have a 50 caliber rifle that could shoot the 50 caliber bullet that was guidable. So people came to us and said, well, they want something that already exists, or do we want to build something around it? The coolest thing about a guided 50 caliber round that you could actually guide up to 16 feet at 1,000 yards, which means hitting a walking, moving target would be doable, is that all we had to do was get it to go about 11 feet out of the barrel, and the guidance take over, and we don't have to worry about how accurate the gun is. Really kind of defeated our purpose for being in the deal. But I know Boeing had a rocket stabilized, a rocket propelled stabilized version that they were working on. And we worked with a different company, and I can't remember the name of it, but theirs was spin stabilized. Did you ever work on that project at all?
Yeah, that was the X-Acto program.
X-Acto.
So it was primed out of Lockheed Martin Missiles and Fire Control down in Dallas area, but it was also involved our team up here in Akron, Ohio. And so actually, I think there were two competitors. There was Lockheed Martin and there was Teledyne at the end of the day. And so the Lockheed Martin team, I don't think transitioned into phase 2, but the Teledyne team did. And there's some videos online of the guys that have done that. And then Sandia National Labs also picked it up after that. So that's a pretty cool program. And I don't know how many of those actually been fielded, but a lot of the stuff that, the technologies that have been developed there end up making it out to the world in some way, shape, or form. And then like our team at Lockheed was the team that did a program called One Shot. So if you've ever heard of that or heard that referenced at all, that was our team back in the day. And that was about that same 2008, 2009 time frame there.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear about that. Brief description of it?
Optical wind measurement system. If you Google it, you'll see that it was probably, looked like about the size of a paper towel roll. And so it was completely impractical to actually carry anywhere. But a lot of that technology has been developed over the past 10 years or so, and finally getting down to a weapon mounted size package that can measure accurately out to about 1,500 meters.
Well, if you think about that time frame that we're talking about, 2008, 2009, a lot of exploratory military money dried up after that. So there weren't nearly as many projects in the last 6-7 years as there were during the time that we're talking about. So, I wasn't surprised. I'm out of the firearms business right now. I'd sold my rifle company in 2013. So, I didn't get a lot of the updates that we did before, but still like to keep up with what's going on with the new stuff. We don't have much time left, Nick, and it doesn't sound like, and I know that you're proud of the work that you do on these products and stuff, but you yourself, you don't sell a product, you don't have anything for but I know that a lot of our listeners are really into this stuff. So if you've got a website that you can give out so that people can look at what you're really doing and find out a little bit more about you, I know they'd love that.
Yeah, sure. And I'd actually really just point them to the Applied Ballistics website, simply because a lot of the products that we embed the technologies into are sold there. And that's probably the best place to find that information. There's a little bit about the team there, and then www.nvisti.com is another place you can kind of get an idea of what is some of the work we work on. And there's some good articles there on wind reading and measuring range target, things like that you guys might find interesting too.
Well, I really appreciate you being on the show with us, Nick. It's been really interesting to me to get to know you and know about the work that you do. Even though I've known about it for a while, just didn't know you. Really appreciate you taking the time to be on. I want to thank all of our listeners and our watchers and our Facebook fans for being with us. And we will see you next week on Taking Stock with Kelly McMillan.